Hello, everybody. You are about to hear a brief retelling of the movie The Vanishing. Enjoy the movie. Barney Kazantz arrived at his country cabin to conduct an experiment and plan a kidnapping. He took a stopwatch in his hand, poured chloroform on a handkerchief, and inhaled several times. When Barney regained consciousness, he was satisfied with the result. His victim would be unconscious for 37 minutes and he would have time to get her to his house. After Barney rehearses how he will lure the girl into his car, not everything works out the first time, but that's what he's been practicing for. If the stranger gets into the car, she has no chance of escape. The smiling man met his daughter at the bus stop. Denise suspects that her father has a mistress because he constantly disappears in his cabin. Even when talking to his daughter, he's working out a plan for a future attack. The girl didn't appreciate the game of getting caught. Barney brings Diane to the house. She helps him with the repairs. He finds a spider and plans something. In the evening, Barney continues to nightmare his daughter. He offers her a snack. Except all the food was covered in spiders, and Denise freaked out and shrieked. That was part of the plan too. In the morning, the boys asked the neighbor if he had heard a woman screaming last night. He answered in the negative. Barney arrived in the township and made his first attempt, asking a girl passing by where the post office was. He offered to give her a ride, but she didn't hesitate to refuse. Barney's heart rate is too high and he needs to be calmer. On the sixth try, his pulse dropped from 180 to 95 beats per minute. Wife Helen also suspects that her husband has someone, but according to him, he's just renovating the cabin. Barney says out of the blue that maybe he should stop this madness, but taking it one step at a time, he will one day cross the line and there will be no turning back. Jeff and Diane are a young couple traveling in America. The girl does not like that the man took her to some wilderness. In the middle of the tunnel ran out of gas, and Diane told Jeff that they need to fill up. Annoyed, Jeff got out of the car and went to get a can of gas, leaving the girl alone. Diane looked for a flashlight and didn't have time to get it, and when Jeff returned, the girl was gone. Frustrated, she sat nearby. In the car, Diane cried. So that the girls wouldn't be so wary of him, Barney pretended to have a broken arm. Besides, a cast is a good place to hide a bottle of chloroform. Diane asks Jeff to promise never to leave her alone again, and afterward gives him a lighter engraved "Forever Diane." The girl takes the keys. Next she will drive, but first she goes to the bathroom. Barney's attention is drawn to her. It's been a while and Diane hasn't come back. She's not in the store, and she's not in the bathroom either. Jeff is gripped by a panicked man running around with a picture of the girl and shouting her name. The cashier remembers the girl. She saw her half an hour ago. In the evening, the police officer notified Jeff that he would not file a report until 24 hours after the disappearance. The man returned to the car and cried. Barney noticed a flyer with Diane's picture on it. She had been missing for 3 years. Jeff glues new flyers every month and recently made a radio appearance. Exhausted, he walks into a cafe at night. The waitress Rita remembers Jeff from school and volunteers to serve him. He tells her about a friend who disappeared 60 miles away and showed her a picture of Diane. The customer knocked over a glass of milk and Rita insisted he no longer drive, but spend the night in a hotel. The waitress ends up tucking Jeff in the garage, herself ensconced there. The next day, the man reveals that he recently lost his job, but is now writing a novel. Rita insists that Jeff take her phone number. Some time passes. Rita and Jeff move in together. He doesn't want to talk about Diane anymore, so he won't suffer. One night, Rita finds Jeff's gun that he bought for self-defense and asks him to get rid of it. A publisher called and set up a meeting. Unfortunately, Jeff's novel is not suitable for them, but in return they offer the writer to write a book about what happened to him a few years ago, and Jeff agreed. He didn't tell Rita what he would be working on. A flashback prompted Jeff to return to his search. He's invited on television, the show with him watching Barney and his daughter. The host suggests the man approach Diane's kidnapper, and he says he wants to meet with him, but only to find out what happened then. He guarantees the kidnapper's safety. Barney works as a teacher at the university. Rita wondered what her young man was writing about. The document was password protected. Rita tried all the variants in which her name appears after she took the name and surname of Jeff's ex and from these letters made up the word disappeared. It was this word that turned out to be the password. Among the children's stories, Rita found a written message to Diane that she couldn't forget her and wouldn't stop until she found her. Rita freaked out, found Jeff and showed up in Diane's clothes, wearing a dark wig. If Jeff wants Diane, he can call her that. She'll treat him like crap and then disappear without a trace. His whole room is lined with maps and newspaper clippings. It's time for Jeff to decide who he loves. She's picked up the password and seeing the book he's writing now. Jeff admits that he is tormented by not knowing. He wants to find out what happened, every detail, even if Diane is dead. Well, in that case, Rita will help him. The two of them arrive at the gas station. Strangely, Jeff's been hesitant to come back here all this time. He's been sending flyers. She's gone, Rita says, and you may never know what happened to her. Now Rita is giving Jeff one last chance, either stay with her and let Diane go or she will leave him for good. Jeff throws himself at Rita and hugs her. All the newspaper clippings and flyers were burned that same day. Barney didn't like the fact that he couldn't see the familiar face anymore, so he wrote a letter to Jeff and slipped it to him. He showed the letter to Rita. He's following me, Jeff concluded. Rita first assumed it was some kind of bully and then demanded that the man go to the police. But Jeff wants to find the guy himself, as he signed up. Rita realized that Jeff hasn't changed, so she broke off the relationship with him. The girl went back to the apartment to pack her things. Jeff also came here. He entered the room following Rita and took out a bottle with a rag. Barney was about to attack, but Rita recorded a message on her answering machine that she intended to disappear from Jeff's life forever, and the maniac fled on his own. Jeff listened to the message and returned to the apartment to find that Rita had moved out, followed by Barney, who told him who he was and showed him the keys he had taken from Diane. Despite promises to just talk, Jeff jumped on the most hated man in the world and started beating him brutally. The maniac just smiles back and says that if Jeff kills him now, he'll never know the truth. Barney invites the man to get into his car, and after some thought, Jeff agrees. He hopes to meet Diane soon. Rita is drunk and wants to go over her answering machine speech one more time, but Jeff re-records the greeting and Barney's voice comes on the tape. Rita realized he was in danger. The affable maniac offered Jeff a snack, and he clarified that he hadn't raped Diane. After Barney told a story about how during a family vacation, they saw a little girl drowning. The man jumped into the water without hesitation and saved her. In his daughter's eyes, he was God. But Barney wondered if he was as capable of spite as he was of good. Terrible evil, the worst that could be, would prove he was a real person. Meanwhile, Rita called the police, but the cop told her they wouldn't announce Jeff's bruises until 24 hours later. Jeff and Barney were stopped by a policeman and asked the latter to fasten his seatbelt. Barney refused at first because he was claustrophobic, even though Rita had a certificate and decided to act on her own. She went to a strange neighbor who saw the fight, but then she was distracted by a little green elf. At the police station, Rita lied about her car being stolen and gave Barney's license plate number. That's how she got his last name and address. Barney talks about how attempts to lure the victim failed, but once for his birthday he was given a bracelet and a photo album dedicated personally to the father of the family. In one of the photos, Barney's arm was broken, at which point he realized he needed to become weaker, not stronger. He easily managed to lure the woman into the car, asking her for help. Only he sneezed and almost fainted when he wiped it off with a handkerchief. Barney decided to abandon his scheme that day and laughingly threw the cast away. However, Diane herself approached him and asked him to exchange bills, which were not accepted by the coffee machine. The girl liked Barney's bracelet and wanted to give one to Jeff. Barney lied that he sells them, so he invited Diane to come to his car and buy one. The price was only $2. The gullible girl followed the stranger. The handkerchief was soaked. Jeff asked her to get in the car and help him. Diane was wary, but seeing the family photo, relaxed and fixed on Barney. Immediately he got on top of her and put her to sleep. Years later, he and Jeff returned to that very gas station. Barney decided to face Jeff because of his persistence and relentlessness. He's a good match. Rita arrives at the maniac's house and Denise comes out. The girl thinks that this is the same mistress of her father. She is intrigued and even agrees to show the way to the forest cabin. Barney continues his game. If Jeff wants to find out what happened to Diane, he has to retrace her steps and drug coffee. It's likely she still is, but without drinking it, Jeff won't know. Barney doesn't even need a gun. His weapon is Jeff's obsession. Finding Diane, that's all there is to his life. In fact, he doesn't even have a choice. Of course he's going to have that coffee. Jeff wakes up in a coffin alive, buried underground. As Barney promised, he'll go all the way Diane went, and there's nothing Jeff can do to help himself. After dropping the girl off at the park, Rita headed for the cabin herself. Stopping nearby, she took her gun with her. Only it turned out that, as she had asked, Jeff had gotten rid of it. Rita was already waiting for Barney and attacked from behind, but was immediately hit in the head with a briefcase. The woman hid in the woods, and at the right moment she hit Barney with a board. He tried to trick her again, saying that if she killed him she wouldn't know where Jeff was, but Rita couldn't do that and she just smacked him in the face with the board. The girl fell on Jeff's grave and ran further. She hoped that her favorite was somewhere in the house. Armed with the knife, Rita called the police. Except that the receiver smelled of chloroform and the girl began to get lost. Just then, Barney returned to the house. Gathering herself, Rita stabbed him with the knife and hurt his hand. But she couldn't get away. The car got stuck in the mud. Barney jumped on the woman in an attempt to put her to sleep, but Rita burned his hand with a cigarette lighter. The handkerchief burned immediately. The weakened woman couldn't escape after all. Barney sits her down in a chair and tells her that what happened to Jeff was his choice. He also offered her a coffee to keep things simple. Looking around and remembering everything she had seen, Rita realized that Jeff was buried. The woman started her game, saying that Barney's daughter was being held hostage and she was willing to trade her for Jeff. Barney didn't believe her at first, but in the short time she had been talking to the girl, Rita had learned something personal about her life. So she was able to convince Barney that she wasn't lying. Taking the rag out of the phone, Barney called home. His worried wife informed him that her daughter had disappeared somewhere. If Barney wanted to find out where Denise was, he'd have to drink coffee, and the maniac didn't hesitate to drain the cup. When Barney lost consciousness, Rita rushed to dig up Jeff in the coffin. He was already unconscious, but then Rita was attacked from behind by Barney with a saw. The drug doesn't really take effect until 15 minutes later. Cricriti helped Jeff awaken and he chopped Barney down with a shovel. Just then Jeff saw another grave where Diane died 3 years ago. During the meeting with the creator, Jeff stated that he would not write a book about what had happened to him and that he and Rita no longer drank coffee.